Let's see, I just got done doing a Minecraft stream.
Yeah, how was that?
Saturday morning Minecraft stream. I did finish a sort of, it's like half automatic farm. Basically, it's just a plot of irrigated land that I have dispensers hanging above, so that I just have to press a button and it clears the whole field. And I still have to manually replace it, but it does half the work for me. So
There you go.
welcome to Talk About Tatooine. I'm Andrew.
I'm Nathan.
And we are twin brothers here to bring you what's new in nerddom and give colorful commentary on our favorite subjects. Welcome to our cantina. Grab a drink and settle in as we set course for realities beyond our own.
Welcome to episode 50, everybody. Today's recording date is November 11th, 2023, and this episode will be released on Monday. Not the 13th. That is incorrect because that's when episode 49 is going to come out, so it's going to be Monday the 20th. Today we're going to be discussing some more Marvel Snap, but first we're going to start off with our starter questions. Andrew, opening question is going to go to you to start. What books have you been reading?
I have been absolutely cruising through The Siege of Terra on audiobook, and I'm really enjoying that. Audiobook is where I do the majority of my reading. However, I did get a hard copy of an original print of Star Wars Vector Prime. It's the first book in the Yuzong Vong War. I haven't actually read that series yet. I went to Half Price Books, and then they had the hard copy, and I said, you know what? We're going to pick that up. And it is the original 1999 copyright, and it's still in really good condition.
Wow, that is a treasure.
Yeah, I'm hoping I can get the rest of the new Jedi Order series in hardback. We'll see. They're old. They're not printing them anymore.
That's going to be a tough order to be able to collect all those.
Yeah, for sure.
I might have to borrow some of those because I've actually never read that series. And it's kind of hard to get on audiobook. I have been reading Death Troopers. I'm almost done with it. I'm a little bit behind on my Halloween reading because I was trying to finish Red Harvest and Death Troopers before Halloween was done. So I'm kind of pushing that into November. But I just spent a bunch of money on the newest Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3, which I'm really, really enjoying so far. Super excited about that. But because I had spent so much money on that, I didn't buy Murtaugh, which was the newest Inheritance series book number 5, or Murtagh. I don't actually know how it's pronounced. I haven't listened to it on audiobooks.
It's the second one. It's Murtagh.
It's a hard G. So I didn't pick that up, and I was going to, but it is still $30. And I'm like, man, I don't really spend $30 on books. If I'm spending $30 on books, I better be getting multiple books. So I was a little bit pushed off by the price, but keep in mind, it is also Christmas season. And like right above my desk, I have Aragon, Eldest, Brisingar, and Inheritance all in hardback. I have the 4-book set. So I'm really excited to get book number 5. So my wife and I are hoping to start kind of like building our own personal libraries.
Yeah, my wife's office is already basically a full library, and my shelf is coming along. I got rid of a lot of my books when I got married because my wife has so many books. That's one of the things that really attracted me to her, was she's a big reader. So, and she's not joking around.
My wife blows through like a book a day. Like, I swear, she's like always running out of books to read, but she reads them all on Kindle. So we don't have a huge physical library right now. So we're working on it. Before we get into today's discussion here, guys, we do just want to throw a thank you out to our patrons. Huge thanks to our top patrons, Mike and Isaac. You guys can support us at Talk About Tatooine over on Patreon. That is the best way to support what we are doing over here on the channel. For just $5 a month, you can get access to our Discord server. If you like our Minecraft content, if you are currently subscribed, that will give you access to our realm. If we get enough patrons, we will actually open up more realms, so that way we can keep that going. All that fun stuff. We're also hoping to do more giveaways, higher quality content, and all that fun stuff. So thank you guys again so much from the bottom of our hearts. We really appreciate the support, and we actually hope that if you guys are listening to this right now, you would consider supporting the podcast as well. Let's get into the show. Our main discussion today is going to be on a lot of the balance patches and new cards coming out in Marvel Snap. We have so much to talk about. So this is going to be a very much a news-focused episode, but really focusing on the upcoming Marvel Snap changes. So if you guys are Marvel Snap listeners, make sure to share this podcast with a friend. We'd really appreciate that. Let's go ahead and just kind of alternate these out. Andrew, go ahead and start us off with that first note on the balance patch.
Yeah, so this last patch that came out on the 9th, that was November 9th. It is now the 11th. It's been out 2 days now, but it's a lot of buffs. There was technically only one nerf in the entire list, and everything else got a buff. So you're pretty pissed about this. I can see your face. Shang-Chi used to destroy everything in a location that was 9 or greater. Now it's 10 or greater. I don't think this is going to have a huge impact, but it keeps some cards below that damage threshold, which is really, really good. So I think Thor is now one of them, with Mjolnir keeping it below 10.
No, he goes to, I think he get +6 power with Mjolnir.
Probably.
So yeah, I think he's still Shang-Chi-able. You can also get around that because it's still, you have to play Mjolnir. So depending on who has priority. I learned about this patch the hard way, and I didn't know it had happened. And so I played Shang-Chi on somebody. Somebody had Werewolf by Night out on the field. It was 9 power. They were playing a really aggressive kind of like move on reveal deck, and I was about to just roast this guy. And I played Shang-Chi. Nothing happened. And I legitimately started looking around for a way to like report a bug. I was like, my Shang-Chi didn't go off. I lost the game because it didn't go off, and I lost that location. Because of that,
that's a rough way to find out about a nerf.
Well, and I was like looking around, and I was like, well, I can report the player, but like he didn't do anything. And so I was like, no, he's not cheating or anything like that. And then I opened up the card, and it was like 10 power or more. And I was like, no.
It's like, when did that happen?
It really crushed my spirits. So now, because that 10 power threshold, again, like a lot of cards can get away from that 9 power. So for example, Rescue was one of my favorite ones to Shang-Chi because it's telegraphed. You're literally like, hey, you have to play another card here to get that bonus. You can also technically play Cerebro 7 now. If you somehow wanted to do that, you wouldn't be able to Shang-Chi anybody. So I am wondering if I want to switch this out with Enchantress, because we have a lot of really, really good ongoing cards, and I'm curious about getting that switched out. Our next change is She-Hulk going up to 10. I actually don't think this is a buff. And here's why I want to say that this is a buff, is because if she had stayed at 9 power, she wouldn't be Shang-Chi-able now. They moved her up. And so it's like, yeah, you're getting more power. You're getting more bang for your buck. But if she had stayed under that 10 power threshold, her utility is so much better, because not only can you get her for a discount, but now she can't be destroyed by Shang-Chi. And so I was like, I don't actually know if that's a buff or a nerf or not. I think it's a balance. It really is, but I'm like, technically it's a buff because her stat line went up. So
yes, it is technically a buff.
He's technically a buff, but there's some other things in there that I'm like, man, I kind of wish she would have stayed under, because then she could duck under Shang-Chi and have a good time with that. So I'm not sure how I feel about this one.
Here's why I think it's still a legitimate buff instead of just maybe a balance thing. Sure, she's still in the range for Shang-Chi, but that didn't change. So she was able to be destroyed by Shang-Chi before. A 6/9 cost card, I didn't like running She-Hulk all that much. And I'll tell you why, is because I didn't like having to skip a turn to save enough energy to play her super early. I really didn't think she was worth it, and I don't really run her for that reason. Other people might feel differently, but for 6/10, okay, double-digit power, potentially for free or almost free, is really, really good. Being able to combo, for example, if you're able to play like her and like something with 5 power, like Taskmaster, you could play Taskmaster and She-Hulk in the same turn. That's 20 power on the field divided between 2 different sections. That's pretty good.
That is pretty good.
Just my thought. Will I start running She-Hulk because of this? I'm not sure. Again, I really don't like having to skip turns to get a discount.
I think the only really deck that this plays a lot into is the High Evolutionary, where you're getting so many benefits from skipping and like not wasting energy, but you're essentially cashing that energy in later. Because if you have Hulk, Cyclops, and Misty Knight,
and Sunspot too.
Yeah, and Sunspot, that 1 energy now translates into like a minimum of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like almost 6 energy. And so this is why High Evo is so effective, is because you can ramp really well. And so I think she would be a really, really good addition to a High Evolutionary deck.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And there's one card that we're going to talk about later that also is going to do. Oh, wait, never mind. I was thinking, I was like, Scar has a discount on him, but it's not related to your energy costs. So I'm going to ignore that. Just ignore me. Okay, so we talked about She-Hulk. Let's talk about Mobius, not Morbius.
Triple M.
He's now switching back to an ongoing. I believe this was actually his original ability, but now his new text is ongoing. Your costs can't be increased. That's awesome. Your opponents can't be decreased. Simple.
Super simple.
They can't get cards cheaper. You can't get cards more expensive. So Iceman, Baron Mordo, I don't remember, aren't gonna affect you as much.
Who's playing Baron?
I don't know. His use case is probably not great. I think this is a solid buff. I really like this, that it gains the ongoing ability because Spectrum is a lot better, but also now this can get countered by Enchantress. So again, it's being balanced by having this text updated.
I would have to agree with that. I think some abilities in the game feel really strange without the ongoing tag, and that does be able to synergize with a lot of other cards. We know that Spectrum is going to be a big player, especially now that she's a 6/7 instead of a 6/5. I'd be really... this also means that if your opponent has Super Scroll in the deck, they can steal that ability and basically nullify Mobius entirely off the field. But if it didn't have the ongoing tag, you wouldn't be able to do that.
For sure.
I'm really, really excited about that.
I was just going to say, moving on to our next card, Doctor Strange moved from a 3/3 to a 2/3, and I think this is a really good buff because the move archetype has really struggled, even with all the attention that it's been getting over the last couple season passes.
It's bad.
There really isn't and here's the reason why it's bad. You can ramp power really, really well with a move deck, but it's predictable. You are choreographing, telling your opponent what you're going to do, especially if you have a Heimdall finisher. If you're in a move deck and you have priority turn 6, you're in big trouble because Shang-Chi is going to obliterate your side of the board.
Absolutely. If you don't have armor in a move deck, I would highly consider putting her in there, and that is a solid card. Now, because one of my biggest issues with playing Doctor Strange, I actually love the move archetype. I've played it quite a bit. I have quite a few multiple man boosters. One of my big issues was playing Doctor Strange for 3 energy. I just felt like that kind of sucked up turn 3 and that never really felt good. Whereas now you can basically do this with a lot of different combos turn 3. So for example, now that he's a 2/3, you could, for example, play Human Torch on one location. Here, let me lay this out really quick. If you played Human Torch, or actually I should say, if you played Iron Fist turn 1, Human Torch and Ghost Spider turn 2, so there's your first 3 energy, and then turn 3 you could follow that up with Doctor Strange and potentially another like 1 cost, or however you want to do that. You've already ramped your Human Torch, for example, probably up to 8 power almost. So you got a lot of stuff going on there. But yeah, I think really the last couple of spotlights has had a lot of different cards that have move in the names, things like that. When we went through and had the Spider-Man season, we had a ton of different move cards kind of go into the play, and I wouldn't say they flopped, but they're still not getting the win rate that they deserve for such a huge part of the game. So for example, there are kind of like 6 main archetypes, or 6 kind of types of cards that are often played. There's discard, destroy, move. It's like basically the filters you can use in the main portion of the card collection. And move is there, and there's a huge amount of cards that can play into this archetype, which gives you a lot of variety, but it's just not winning. Especially if you're playing that Heimdall finisher. You can basically avoid the left lane, or like lock it down. For example, like if you played Professor X turn 5 on the left lane, they're going to be like, cool, no, I'm not going to get those like extra buffs or things like that. And again, things are really easy to choreograph. If you have Shang-Chi, it's really easy to hit Vulture, really easy to hit Kraven if for some reason you're bumping him up all the way up to 10 power now. Really easy to hit Human Torch, especially if Killmonger enters the chat. I mean, like Killmonger absolutely destroys move decks because they're usually going to take out Iron Fist, Human Torch, and Ghost Spider. And that's like minimum. You're playing 3 power and you're taking out minimum 6 if they didn't buff Human Torch at all from the other side of the field, and it just feels good. Feels really, really good. So I'm glad that they're buffing that. I still think a lot of work needs to be done on the move archetype.
Agreed. And they're coming out with some cards. I want to make a clarification that not all cards with the move word in its name is considered the move archetype. Primary example, Werewolf by Night. Werewolf by Night is not a good move deck archetype card because it's filling up your locations. It's better for an on reveal deck, basically where you're taking this really powerful creature and you're continuously moving him around the board so your opponent doesn't know what you're going to do. And that is much more valuable than getting a bonus just from moving. I mean, that's sort of what he does, but in a move deck, you're like, okay, I need to put all my guys in this like center lane. Now I need to move them over to where Craven is. And now I need to move them away from Craven and back to Craven. Whereas Werewolf by Night is a little bit more chaotic and harder to predict. And that is valuable. Like that is really valuable. Like doing things your opponent doesn't expect will win you games.
Absolutely. Play with a little bit of chaos. I was playing against somebody who had Werewolf by Night the other day, and this was before Shang-Chi got nerfed, and I knew they were going to play an on reveal on right. It was super well telegraphed. I had just enough power over there where they needed to bring somebody over there to win the location, and so I kind of baited him into bringing Werewolf by Night over into the right location, and then I just Shang-Chi'd like 30 power off of his lane, and like snapped on him for 4 cubes, and it felt really, really good. So I have not been seeing people place like super well worth with Werewolf by Night, but keep in mind now that Shang-Chi hits for 10, you can get Werewolf by Night up to 9 power. So he can move like up to 3 times and still be
safe.
Yeah, still be safe. So I think that's really, really good. Moving into our next one, we've got Jessica Jones, which honestly, holy cow, this is like one of those retro cards, is going from a 4/4 to a 4/5. So that means when her ability goes off and is finally activated, she's going to go up to 9 power. I had this card in a lot of my starter decks. I loved playing this, and I really like her synergy with Zabu, and she plays really, really well with Miss Marvel. You have to be super calculated with how you're playing your cards and where you're playing them, things like that. And Miss Marvel is an absolute unit right now in certain decks. So keep in mind, if you are able to put Miss Marvel in the center, because she works on adjacent locations very similar to Mr. Fantastic, so best played in the center. If you have Jessica Jones on one side of the field and you play, let's say, a Cosmo, I forgot the name of the dog, the good boy. If you play Cosmo in the middle and then follow that up by Miss Marvel, who's an ongoing, then you're going to bump one card up to 14 power in one lane. And there's not anything they can do about it, especially if you have that Cosmo down, and then you just bump it up. You play like an onslaught onto the net, like right in the middle as well, and you are ramping these up. And then just like finish it off with something fun, maybe hit them with a Spectrum Finisher or something like that, and you're getting a lot of power for just one card. The other day I saw somebody play I forgot how they did it. I think they had Limbo involved, but they had, who was it? They had Onslaught in the middle with Miss Marvel. They got really greedy. I didn't have an Enchantress in my deck. And then they played an Orca over on the left lane. And Orca, because of Orca's ability, and there was the only card there, went all the way up to like 26 power on one lane for a 6 cost, 26 power. I was like, I didn't expect it. I just kind of like ate my cubes and was just like, I'm going to take notes on this because now I really want to do this. So cards like Jessica Jones are, I think, even more fun in my opinion. So I think we're going to get a lot of fun out of Miss Marvel and her new kind of ongoing archetype. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I think she's really good. Turn 4 for 9 power is just really strong. It's easy money. Moving on, Warpath is now, he's an ongoing card where if you have an empty location, he gets +4 power. Now it's +5. This is not worth using, in my opinion. This is a bad use of your energy.
Warpath who? Yeah, I have won so many games because my opponents play Warpath, because they're giving me a free location. And a lot of the times if I see them play Warpath, I'm going to find my cheapest card. I'm going to play it over in the other location, because now I'm winning the location with like 1 or 2 power. And what that does, especially late in the game, is it forces them to either double down on Warpath and continue filling that location, or I just took that location with one power. Now I can focus the rest of my deck on taking one of those other two lanes. And it just becomes so easy. And I don't really understand why, like, why would they, first of all, I didn't think people were winning with this. So why did it need a nerf? I don't really know. Now I think they've basically nerfed it into the ground.
No, he got a buff. It's 5 instead of 4.
Oh, gotcha. My bad. So now goes up by 5. I still don't think that's good enough for giving up a lane. I don't really think that's good enough.
Agreed.
The best way I've seen Warpath winning is like when people are playing Onslaught over Warpath on turn 6, because then he gets, in this case, instead of getting +8, he would get a +10, which is really, really good, especially if you're playing a 7 cost Onslaught on top of that. But that also means you have to be winning the other location, and that's winning that location with turns 1, 2, 3, and 5, right? Because you're probably playing Warpath turn 4 and Onslaught turn 6, right? And so you kind of like think about your card combinations, and if you don't really build that, or if you spread your power out too much, or you're not able to play on all locations, like heaven forbid you get like Space Throne or something like that, and you're like, hey, you don't have that many slots to play, it can be really, really restrictive. So I'm still not a huge fan of Warpath, but
He's bad. Let's rush through these last two. There's not really a lot going on with this. Strong Guy is now a 3/3 from a 4/4. So this feels more like just a balance change. I would still technically call it a buff because he's now not able to get Shang-Chi'd. I don't use Strong Guy. I probably never will.
the only use I've ever seen people use him is in Hella Discard.
But he's B tier for that, because I main Hella Discard and he's not in my lineup, and I got to infinite with him, or infinite with that deck, and Strong Guy was nowhere to be seen.
I don't necessarily understand this guy.
Strong Guy is the kind of card you put in there if you're missing a couple of the staples. There's usually one utility spot in that deck, at least the way that I run it, and I actually put Blue Marvel in there because if my Blue Marvel lands on my Onslaught, that's really good. +2 power to everything on your field was really strong. And usually that's going to be a lot better than anything Strong Guy is going to put out.
Coming up next, we just have Monster going up from a 6/9 to 6/10. Really, that's just tracking with the Shang-Chi changes. Basically, you can destroy it with Shang-Chi. I mean, yeah, they're just keeping it intact. So basically, it's like if you see Monster Island, whoever has Shang-Chi is probably going to win that island, or win that location, excuse me. So,
which that's exactly the same we saw before. Anytime I was running Shang-Chi and Monster Island came out, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to blow that up. Sometimes I would jump the gun, blow it up, and then they would play something powerful there, and I'm like, dang it.
Yeah, for sure. I would usually my goal was always to play somewhere around 5 power on that location. So if somebody does play Shang-Chi, and I want to have Shang-Chi back, I basically already outbalanced their guy. So, but I get it. You can't increase Shang-Chi's power because he already removes so much power from the field already. So I get that. Now we're going to move away from the balance patch here, guys, and we're going to move into some upcoming changes with locations, new cards, season passes, all that fun stuff. We're going to jump into kind of a couple of different things. We're going to talk about December's season pass quite a bit because we're in November right now. You guys are going to be able to get and play those cards, and just because of logistics, if we were to talk about the November season pass by the time this episode came out, you guys are like, yeah, the month is almost over. We know.
We talked about some of it.
Yeah, we talked about some of it already, but this is, from logistically, it makes more sense for us, even though this is still early November for us. When this is released, it'll be closer to December, so that way you guys will have the scoop on the season pass and can hopefully make some educated decisions on what synergies you guys can be looking to build up. So let's start off with a update coming out on November 29th. We're going to get Turn X4, which is a new location. After you play a card here, transform it into another card of the same cost. Andrew, go ahead and give us your thoughts on this.
This is risky business. I'm not sure that I like this all that much. It can be great for cards you're trying to get rid of. For example, what's his face? The Hood. Great card to play here because you don't want the Hood on your side. Bad cards to play here. Hobgoblin or Green Goblin. Don't play these here. For most on reveal cards, I think there's a value here because, like, on reveal, it happens, it's over, that's it. Don't play your ongoing cards here because you're not going to be happy with it. Do not play your ongoing cards on Tarnax 4.
I think one of my favorite cards I would like to play here is probably Ironheart, just like because you're swapping out, you're getting the benefit of putting 6 power out onto the field, ideally if you have 3 cards out already, and then you're losing the negative of her being a 3/0, right? And so you're swapping her, like maybe you get lucky and you play her, you get 6 power, and then you come out with like a Maximus, and then you just like played
Or a
another
Green
7
Goblin.
power or a Green Goblin, and it's like then it goes off, afterwards. And so I think cards like that would be really, really fun. Like personally, I'd be really happy with playing like Silver Surfer here, for example, as well, just because it is going to go off. Silver Surfer doesn't really have a good stat line himself, and so there's an ability for other things to happen as well. So it's kind of like Comertage, but not. But also there's other ongoing cards as well. You get the whole spectrum of 3-cost cards, not just other on reveals. So I think this could be pretty fun, but keep in mind anything above 4 cost, I'm not playing here because these are the cards that you're setting up for your game-winning combos. And I'm going to be salty if I like played an Onslaught here and then it like replaced it with like a Galactus where I already have cards there. And I'm like, cool, I can't do anything here now.
Thanos is going to have a lot of fun on this location.
Yeah. Congrats. You played yourself. On December 4th, we are going to be starting the new season pass. So we are going to be talking about the Hellfire Gala. Our first card that we're going to be talking about is Sebastian Shaw. He's a 3/3. And honestly, this might be one of the most exciting cards I have seen in a really long time. I don't know about you, but I am hyped for this card. The text on this one says, when this card permanently gains power, gain +2 more. And that is crazy. Probably going to get this card Shang-Chi'd quite a bit, but also like there's some really, really big possibilities here. Andrew, go ahead and give us kind of like your rating for this card.
Dude, yeah, I'd put this like S tier, 5 stars. It's a great card. If you're going to pay for the season pass, this would probably be a good one. Looking ahead, it doesn't seem that we're going to have access to Sebastian Shaw via some of the spotlight caches for a while. A clarification, however, permanently gaining power is when you get a buff. And if you move, like if a card were to get a buff and move a location and it keeps that power, that's permanent. For example, Ironheart. It gives you random units +2 power, and if they move around, it's going to keep that power. That is a permanent change in power. Captain America, however, gives a +1 power to units in that location, but if they moved, they would lose that power because they wouldn't be next to Captain America, therefore it's not permanent. So you have to be careful, and you have to do a little bit of strategic thinking when you're placing Sebastian Shaw and those accompanying cards into the deck.
Absolutely. A good way to think about this is on reveal cards are going to be permanent effects. Ongoing cards, because they can be taken away, are non-permanent. So that's a good way to think of this. Currently, I'm playing a 3-power Wong deck, which I'm having moderate success with. It kind of depends on the day. So I love this. The fact that he costs 3 power, can be buffed by Silver Surfer, is going to give him an automatic bonus, which I think is awesome. So I cannot wait to slot this guy in. So just for our listeners, some potential synergies that would be really, really good with Sebastian Shaw are going to be Ironheart, Silver Surfer, Forge, Okoye, Shuri, Nova, and Nakia. So a lot of different cards that are going to give different bonuses. I'm right there with you. 5 out of 5 stars. I think this is an S tier card for being cheap but super powerful. So I'm going to recommend that because the spotlight caches don't have this guy slotted in for quite a while after December. I think December season pass is going to be pretty worth it. I think this is going to be something you're going to want to jump on. So from our recommendation to you guys, I would say Sebastian Shaw gets a thumbs up from both of us. So
yep, for sure. I probably will be splurging on him. I didn't get the November season pass. I'm not super thrilled, but I did get October. Elsa Bloodstone was really good. Elsa Bloodstone and Sebastian Shaw together, I think, would be really, really good. Also, Sebastian Shaw on a place like Muir Island, like that's +3 power every single turn.
Yeah, that's crazy. He's going to ramp up so much.
That's insane. That's really good. Honestly, Sebastian Shaw draw on Muir Island with what's his face, Iron Man and Living Tribunal, you probably will win. I love Tribunal though.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Tribunal's fun. He's one of the only cards I'm still working on getting, but I'm not super worried about it.
He is coming up in a Spotlight Cache relatively soon.
Yeah, I know, I'm saving.
Let's talk about December 5th. We are getting the Blob. He is a 6/3. On reveal, merge your deck into this and gain its total power. Ongoing, it can't be moved. So it's got the on reveal stuff. It's got the ongoing stuff. What do you think?
This is a hard one, just because I do enjoy the thematic element of card building games. So like the fact that he's the Blob, he's kind of like soaking everybody in. I think that's like really, really fun. That's the actual noise he makes, is that. And I think what's really, really cool about this is this shows you that Marvel Snap, the limit for what the cards can do is truly only capped by the imagination of the devs. So I really, really like that. I think this is going to be a very interesting card, but I will say I hope you play this with second priority, because if somebody's like, hey, I think they're going to play the Blob, but it also depends on like what you have in your deck. And so, because you could put a lot of power down, but because this is a 6-cost card, you have to be really careful of whether or not you're going to be able to do, like, for example, a Living Tribunal and playing Blob at the same time, because you would want to make sure in turn 6 you're playing Living Tribunal, and then turn 7, if you had magic out on the field, then you're playing that. So I think there is some limitations. You lose a lot of utility. And so I liked some of the notes that you made, and I'll kind of like let you kind of like go over those. But for example, if you're waiting on other cards to get some really, really good combos out, I think that's like not super great. But again, this is a turn 6. This is like whatever you got left is just
For
going
sure.
into the Blob. So I would probably have to say I'm going to probably give this an initial kind of like 3.5 out of 5 stars, because I don't necessarily know how well it's going to be played yet, but I'm really excited to see.
Yeah, I really think this is going to go well in the Taskmaster deck. This is a great way to maximize the power of your entire deck. However, it starts falling short when you run a lot of cards that have more utility than just raw power. Infinite is going to be a much better value than, say, Onslaught, not only because Onslaught has less power, but because you lose the Onslaught ability, and Infinite's ability is not, it's negative. Like you want to ignore Infinite's ability as much as you possibly can. Like, that's why I run Infinite in my Hella discard deck, and I get him onto the field almost every game, is because I'm ignoring his, hey, you have to skip a turn to play me. It's like, no, I'll just discard you and play you from the grave. So cards that are really going to do well with Blob, Infinite, Typhoid Mary, Red Skull, and Atuma, I think are really going to benefit from the Blob. If you have the Blob and your opponent plays Black Widow, snap on them.
I like that recommendation, because they're holding you up from drawing, essentially. I wonder if that would potentially give more utility to cards like it's not Dazzler, but what's the card that's 3/3 and it makes both players draw a card? Crystal. I'm like, Crystal would be a good one. Maximus would be a good one, because specifically if it's in your deck, it's not this, like, I'm drawing the separation here between your deck and your hand. So for example, whatever's left in your deck is merged. If it's in your hand, it doesn't get merged, right? Is that kind of our understanding? So this guy could be countered super early on, but also like good locations that are going to like play well with this would be, for example, like imagine getting Triskelion and you have 7 cards in your hand now. You probably can't play a lot of them until like turn like 4 or 5. And so that's going to really slow down your draw rate and could be really, really.
The card, or the location that I think of that would do really well with the Blob, is actually Vibranium Mines. Basically, you just pump your deck full of cards, and then they all go into the Blob. So you're looking at quantity over quality.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were to give this card a rating of 1 to 5, where would you put it?
I'd give it a 3.75.
3.75 and a 3.5 from me. So both of us kind of like more positive than negative, but also like still kind of like waiting to see what else is going to happen. I like that. And just so you guys know, this card is going to be coming out in the Spotlight Cache and is going to be coming out with Stegron and Jeff. So overall, I don't actually know if I'm going to be saving for this, because I have both those cards already. And so I don't necessarily know if I want to spend Spotlight Caches or keys now. They're keys to unlock the caches to get cards that I already have. I want to get the best bang for my buck. So I'm gonna wait on this one probably for a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't like Stegron. Jeff is a staple in a lot of decks, but I really don't want to get Stegron, so I probably am going to skip. December 12th, we're moving on to the next card, Firestar. This is another 6/3 on reveal. Each card you played last turn gains this card's power. It's coming out with Ravonna Renslayer and Tribunal. Tribunal is a great card. It's really, really fun. It adds that more chaotic element that your opponent can't really account for. Really, unless someone is a genius, they can't really see what's going to happen with the math on your side of the field when you play Tribunal. It's really hard to kind of do that snappy math.
No pun intended.
So my initial thought, I have a really fun deck that is all about like playing lots and lots of low power cards and them kind of all feed off of each other. Hitmonkey is a big staple in that. So is Elsa Bloodstone, things like that. I think Firestar's a really good addition, like as a finisher for that, because you can play cards like Rocket Raccoon, Hawkeye, Ant-Man, She-Hulk, or Mirage, and then play Firestar turn 6, and you just gained 12, 15 power, depending on how well you use that utility.
Absolutely. I kind of see this as an expensive Silver Surfer. I think this could play really, really well with cards like Sebastian Shaw. I think there's a lot of integrated utility and synergy there. But I'd also be really excited. So imagine turn 5, you played Sebastian Shaw, Ant-Man, Forge being played right before Firestar, because now you're going from a 6/3 to a 6/5, and so now that 5 power is getting multiplied to everybody. So I'd be really excited about that. I think other ways of getting this up, so I had kind of mentioned Okoye and Nakia playing as well. Just being able to add all of those two different cards would be like, all that extra power would be really, really good. So I think this one's going to be really, really fun. I'd actually give this a 4 out of 5 stars. What would you rate it?
Honestly, 4.5 out of 5. I really like Firestar.
You heard that here, guys. We're hot on Firestar. Here we go. All the puns today.
Hit us with that next location, if you would.
All right, guys. Coming up, we're going to see a new location on December 13th, which is Castle Blackstone. The player winning here gets +1 energy each turn. And holy cow, I am excited. I love locations like this. Like when you get things like White Hot Room and cards that let you draw, the Abbey, I think it is, like cards that are basically like, hey, if you're winning here, you get bonuses. Baxter Building, the Nexus. I love locations like these because it really gives you a tactical field that you have to play with. So a lot of times when I'm looking at different locations, you can kind of think of some locations as on reveal and some locations as ongoing. And this is an ongoing location. And I really, really like those because it helps really, really kind of help mix up the chaos of play. I think a deck that would play really, really well here is the Disruption deck. I'm seeing a lot of people playing with just Viper, the Hood, Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, all these different things, and it's just crazy and kind of annoying to play against, if I'm going to be honest. And I think that would actually be a really, really good mix for this, because if you can not only decrease power on their side of the field and get yourself energy, you are going to win. So especially if you're like, hey, I just hit him with like Man-Thing, for example. I think Man-Thing is actually getting better with time, because now that we're far enough away from the high evolutionary meta, people are not running Luke Cage as much. So you really have to watch out for all these different archetypes. And because the game has kind of grown to this certain mass, not every deck is super like telegraphed. Like I would say even 3 months ago, you knew when somebody was going to play Galactus, you knew when somebody was going to run a Zoo deck, you knew when somebody was going to play Hitmonkey. There was like these archetypes that like when you saw, you could usually guess what archetype people were playing with by their first or second turn. Like once you saw those cards, you're like, oh, they're playing this deck. And now it's not as clear. And I actually really, really like that because it forces you to think quite a bit more.
So Castle Blackstone, I love this location. I love locations that just give extra power. I think they're really great. There's nothing that feels worse than playing like a 1-cost card on a location that hasn't been revealed yet, and it ends up being super flow. I usually just retreat. I'm like, nope, Like I'm going to be down one energy.
Yeah, I know that energy is, yeah, basically the extra energy per turn is like having Electro sans Electro.
Yeah, it's really good. That this will do great for decks that get power on the field quick and early. Oddly enough, OG Patriot actually, in my opinion, does really well at that. Conversely, playing Nebula at another location will be really good because your opponent is gonna focus on that location, and then you're just gonna watch your Nebula climb in power. This location also pairs really well with Havoc, who I have a lot to say about Havoc. I don't really know if Havoc's going to work out, but we'll get there in just a second.
I say let's get right into it. I don't have anything else to add it for Castle Blackstone. So Andrew, talk to us about Havoc, who's coming out on December 19th with Legion and Nico and the Spotlight caches.
Okay, so Havoc is a weird one, and maybe I just don't see the value right away. It's got a limited use case, I think. Havoc is a 2-1, and after each turn, you lose one max energy, and this gains +3 power. So it's a huge trade off for a lot of power. Honestly, this should be +4, in my opinion. I think losing 1 power a turn is a little rough because if you play this on turn 2, your economy is now stuck at 2 energy. That's how that works, right? Whatever turn you play it on, that's the maximum amount of energy you get for each turn for the rest of the game.
Pretty much. So depending on when you play this, this can really, really hurt you. So if you, for example, got Tinkerer's Workshop turn 1 and you decided to play this card, you now have 5 energy the rest of the game spread out across each turn to play. That's not enough. Yeah, so I think this is really, really hard. And for example, it's kind of an interesting play because you have to let this grow 3 times before, as an opponent, it's now a 210. But at the same time, like, they're gonna have such a hard time if you're playing this in turn 3, let's say, and so that way you're bumping up 3 power for the rest of the game. Then you have so little power to play with, and your opponent can just like, hey man, I know you have a really hard time getting your economy up, but like, I'm actually just going to wait for that to build, and I'm going to hit it with Shang-Chi at the end of the game, right? Like, it could be a really big feel bad moment. I'm going to keep my opinion short on this one. I'm going to be upset if this card gets it in my hand, i.e. via District X or Triskelion. I'm going to be real mad because I don't see the use in it right now. However, I have been wrong about cards before, and I like being wrong because I like seeing the creativity of other deck makers. So I'm really excited to see what other people are going to do with this. However, I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 5.
Honestly, I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5. I don't like this card. But if anyone is going to make that card work, it's going to be the Marvel Snap community. So get on it, fellas and ladies.
Coming up next on December 26th, so post-Christmas, we've got Celine coming out. This is a 1 cost, -1 power. On reveal, afflict the lowest power card in each player's hand with -3 power. This is going to be coming out in the Spotlight cache with Iron Lad and Black Knight. Andrew, go ahead and give us your thoughts on this one.
I think Celine is a pretty good card. So this is definitely meaner than Iceman. I don't like it when bad things happen to my hand. So cards like Iceman, Celine, Scorpion that really affect the overall power and cost of your hand are just annoying. It's like when you play against a blue Magic player in Magic the Gathering. They're like, I'm not necessarily going to win the game. I'm just going to make it so annoying for you to win that I'll just win by default.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really, really interesting card. I actually really like this card. I think if you are running, like, for example, if you have this card in your hand and you have Green Goblin or Hobgoblin into your hand, I think this is going to be a huge boost in utility. And this is going to really hurt cards like Iron Man as well. Like, imagine having Iron Man in your hand, you're running discard Hella Cheese, and you're like, dude, I can't wait for that Iron Man to hit the field. Whatever location he lands on, we're going to win it. And then it's like, hey, it's -3. Guess what? If you wanted to play that, it's now -6. So you'd have to really offset that -3 to get that doubling effect for your locations. And so that's like playing a worse Hobgoblin or worse Green Goblin. Plus if you do play this and then on turn 3 you're able to play a Green Goblin, a 3 -6, and you're taking a slot on someone else's location, that's brutal. It's brutal. Imagine playing, let's say, Celine, and then playing oh shoot, what is her name? Shuri, and then playing Hobgoblin. Like, you're gonna get a what, minus like 22 power card onto their side of the lane. And it's like, cool, whatever lane that is, you own now. Most decks cannot get 22 power reliably onto a location to even get that back up to 0 and have a positive net balance. So you could put base Shuri with 1 power or 2 power is going to take that location because that's a 24 power swing. Pretty insane if you ask me. Plus, like, she just has the fun part. She's a -1. Send her over with Viper. I think the fact that we have more negative cards on the field is really opening up how the game is played, because everything is not just moving in the positive direction away from 0, but you can move into the negative direction as well. So I'm a huge fan of this. I'm going to give this card a 4 out of 5. I'm really excited to play this card.
Ooh, you and I have very different feelings about this card. I'm not going to run it. I don't want it. And if I see this being played a lot, I'll throw in Luke Cage. Luke Cage is a great card. There's enough value you get out of Luke Cage, even if your opponent doesn't affect the power of your cards. For example, Sewer System, Negative Zone, those places, or the one that's like, oh, -1 power after every turn. Dude, Luke Cage is like, he's a staple in a lot of decks, and especially if we see an increase in high Evo. I don't like Celine. I'm not going to run her. 2 out of 5.
All right, so a little bit split on that, but that is all right by me.
We are allowed to share different opinions.
All right. Coming up here, guys, the last piece of news for Marvel Snap that we're going to share with you guys today is going to be the December 27th location, White Palace. The text on this one says, copy the highest cost card in your opponent's hand. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s getting a great addition. I'm pretty excited about this. And honestly, it's just, I love spying on my opponent's hand. If I can see that, like, hey, they've got an archetype that maybe my deck doesn't counter super well, I'm going to keep that down to 1 cube for as long as I can in the round, and maybe they won't get the right draws. But when they snap, if I know it's a card that I am not going to be able to take out, then I'm like, cool, I'm done. I'm going to retreat. I'm going to give them that 1 cube, and that way I can win later. I'm mitigating my losses as much as possible. So I like this location. I love Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's a really, really fun deck, and I need it to be better because they nerfed it in a lot of ways. So yeah, I'm excited to see it.
For sure. So that's all we got for you guys in the month of December. Honestly, we highly recommend this game. Please play it. It's so fun. But we are going to move on to some news from the HoloNet. There's a lot of Marvel news coming out, but we're going to start with, actually, you had actually talked about this a little bit in our opening question. Nathan, hit us.
Okay, so I had mentioned this earlier, but Book 5 in the Inheritance series has been released. I'm super excited about this. This is probably one of the series that actually got me into being a reader, probably even more than Harry Potter, because I don't know about you, but I was last in line to get the Harry Potter books because I was the youngest. Every one of those books went in chronological order, so it was oldest you, me, every single time. And once I got my hands on these, because they were available in the school libraries, I remember reading Eldest by the time the week was done, and I had returned it. Like, I literally just sat up in my room and I read it and I read it and I read it. So I'm super excited for Book 5. That is Murtagh coming out. I'm super excited to add it to my collection. If you guys haven't read the Inheritance series so far, I highly recommend reading it. However, do not watch the Aragon movie. It will ruin the universe for you. So read the books first.
We don't talk about the Aragon movie. It's bad.
Andrew, hit us with that next one.
So I feel like this is kind of a lame news item, but like telling you guys that like some movies have not been moved back, like, hey, it's still going to release at this time, I feel like is still newsworthy because there's always so many delays. And with the SAG-AFTRA strikes, which I believe are finished now, correct? They reached a deal. Venom 3 has actually been moved out. So it was supposed to come out in July of 2024. So it was supposed to be a summer blockbuster. Now it is going to come out in November 2024. So we have 1 calendar year before we get to see Venom 3.
Gotcha. We do have something on the positive side. Kraven is still on to release for August 24th, 2024. So I don't know about you, but I'm super excited for Kraven. I think that's going to be a fun one.
It looks so good. And I believe it's rated R. The more gritty superhero movies I am here for. Oh, they're so good. That's why I like watching Invincible so much. by the time of this recording, you probably already know that The Marvels is out by the time of this recording. It's not doing great on IMDb. Right now, it's listed at a 6.1, but it's doing a little bit better on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got a 63% on the tomato meter, but it's got an 85% audience score. As far as like tomato meter, I always trust the audience score more than I do the movie critics, because movie critics are pretentious. Like, I'm just going to say it. They're like, I am so good. You know, Gil Chesterton from Frasier, the food critic? That's how I imagine every film critic. They're like, oh, this isn't art.
This isn't cinema.
Dude, unclench yourself. This is not cinema. I would not watch this. Does this come out at Sundance? Oh, it's Iron Man 4. I've never heard of this before. It's like how video game journalists like are bad at video games kind of thing. It's like, man, who gives a crap what you think? Like, you're a small sample size and you're pretentious. So like, you're just going to be a little bit more biased in my opinion. Whereas the audience score, I think it's just more of a gut reaction to what the people think it should be. They're like, hey, I liked it. 85%. Right on.
All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening in here today. We are coming up on the 58-minute mark, so I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Every single one of you guys watching is amazing. Make sure you guys leave us your theories in the comments and share different deck compositions and all the different things. Let us know what you guys think of these cards. If you guys think our ratings are spot on, that'd be awesome. Share us with a friend. If you guys think we are wrong, or you're like, hey, I don't think you considered this part of these decks, for example, let us know in the comments. We actually really love that interaction with there. And again, make sure you guys subscribe, like the videos, so the algorithmic overlords will slice this video into the feeds of other like-minded folks. And until next time, happy snapping, everybody.